After our Maundy Thursday service, as we were driving home, I said to Omar, "Look at the moon." It was one of those full and glorious moons that was glowing down through the trees at Horner Park. Easter is the only church holiday which is dependent on the cycles of the moon. We celebrate Easter on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. It turns out that our Muslim and Jewish siblings also observe Ramadan and Passover dependent on cycles of the moon. And this year, our holidays had this rare convergence during the same time on our calendar, which was kind of cool. While it seems a little complicated and unpredictable to determine our religious festivals based on the moon, there is some reason for it. In the case of Christianity, Holy Week and Easter coincide with spring. All around us, life is coming back. There's tiny buds that are appearing on trees, and the parsley is starting to come up in my garden. There's flowers that are pushing up through the ground. God's creative power is on full display all around us. While this natural waking up of the earth makes sense and is predictable, resurrection, on the other hand, is not natural. When someone is buried, they stay buried. And at least in this life, we don't expect to see them again in any tangible way. While the gardens and cemeteries come back to life in the spring and we've got new green grass and flowers and all that kind of thing, that's about it. And the best that we can do is visit the graves of the ones that we've loved who are gone and continue on. That is exactly what Mary and Mary Magdalene did that early morning when they went to Jesus' grave. But what they encountered was anything but natural and predictable. The way that St. Matthew tells it, that quiet morning they went to the tomb, and as soon as they got there, an angel flutters in and makes such a thump of a landing that there is an earthquake. Then the angel rolls back the massive stone and plunks down on top of the boulder. You can almost see that angel sitting there grinning at them with their arms crossed, while the guards who were standing watch at the grave tremble and then pass out. The two Marys are standing there, stunned, taking it in. What in the world? You see, it had been a terrible last couple of days. The entire city had been up in arms over Jesus. The Roman leaders and the leaders of the day, they had done everything that they could to get rid of him. They had smeared him. They'd condemned his followers. They'd launched a highly successful PR campaign against the charismatic and gentle teacher. And then they publicly executed him. The governor Pilate was eager to quell the uproar in the city, and he washed his hands of the whole debacle famously. Then he sent a couple of guards to the tomb to make sure that no one tried to pull any monkey business with the body after Jesus was buried, and the two women probably crept to the tomb that dawn, still very much afraid. And now this, an angel. They must have been trembling or quaking in their boots because the angel says to them, "Do not be afraid." The fear that they're channeling is right on par with how all of the great biblical characters respond when there is big news to manage. Remember Mary, the mother of Jesus, when she found out she was pregnant, the angel came to her and said, "Fear not, you're pregnant with the Son of God and unmarried," which is going to soon get very fun to explain to everyone. But fear not, the angel said, "God is with you." Not only is fear the right response for ancient biblical people confronting big news, fear also happens to be the way that everyday people like us respond when we are looking straight at something, at some sort of new truth or reality that we know is going to change us forever. The fear that we feel is something that we all know when we're standing on the edge of something new. It's the fear that you feel after you hang up with that phone call that you didn't expect, or the news that you didn't see coming that leaves a pit in your stomach. But the odd thing is that right there with that pit in your stomach, somehow your priorities become clear, and you sense that sitting there right next to fear is gratitude and even joy. It happened to Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. They were terrified there at the tomb that morning, right? But at the same time, they were overjoyed with the news that Jesus was alive. And we know that feeling too. We feel fear about what might happen to our children in a dangerous world, but then we feel joy when we think of the blessing that they are in our lives. We feel fear when someone that we love is sick, and then joy in registering, oh, what this person means to me, what a gift they are to me. We feel fear in leaving an old job, but joy in the coworkers that we have there that we love and the possibility of what could be. There's fear when the end of life draws near, but joy in remembering the life that we've lived. There's fear when we look at all the problems of the world, our nation, our neighborhood, and then joy to be here in this moment with the ones that we love. Fear and joy so often hold hands. As Mary Magdalene and the other Mary process those twin feelings of fear and joy, the angel invites them into the tomb to have a look around and see for themselves that Jesus isn't there. They poke around in that cold, damp cave, looking at each other in wide-eyed wonder and then terror. And then the angel pipes up and says, "Go now quickly and tell the disciples he has been raised from the dead and is on his way to Galilee. This show is on the road." I wonder if before they took off running, they thought about it for a moment, those two women, and they grasped each other's hands, leaning against each other, trying to catch their breath, but then they run with their hearts pounding. No sooner had they taken off when Jesus shows up right there with them on the road. "Greetings," he says to them, and it is about more than they can bear, and they grab onto his feet beside themselves. Jesus also tells them not to be afraid, probably because new life is frightening. When you expect a sealed rock in front of the tomb and instead you find a big angel sitting on that boulder grinning down at you. When you're spinning your wheels in the past and then suddenly someone stops you and points you forward and said, "Look what's coming down the future." When you're searching around a tomb for something dead to hang on to, and instead you find the risen Christ, the possibility of what could be is stunning, even frightening, and it certainly isn't natural or predictable. So what do the women do? Well, something about that joy they feel, I think that joy pushes them through their other feelings and pushes them towards courage, and off they go to tell the disciples what had happened. Off they go to build a new world. And isn't that the way that it is with us too? The hope and the joy that we feel for what could be pushes us through to courage. We are living in extraordinary times. And sometimes it feels like the very world is shifting and quaking beneath our feet. And yet we hope for a new world. What I know is that God is always pushing us to the edge of what is comfortable or what feels predictable in our own lives and in society, and asking us to imagine what could be. Right now, we have the opportunity to be a part of shaping a new world. Shaping this place that we live in into something new. New life is frightening. It's not something that's predictable like the moon cycles. It's not smooth, but we must imagine what God is calling us to grow into. We cannot stay looking at the cold gray walls of the tomb. Sometimes love will ask us to take a stand and take us places where we don't think that we can go. But if we want real conversations about justice or equity or love or change in ourselves or the wider world, they cannot happen while we sit in our comfort zone. Just as God pointed those women and sent them on their way, we are sent to go and seek the love of God that is alive around us and share the story about how we know that God's love is alive in our lives, even while the very ground is quaking beneath our feet. For Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia.